Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach, coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Wow, I'm super excited. Joe, thank you so much for being on the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
I am fabulous, Raphael. I mean, life's just great and it gets better all the time. And thank you very much for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. It does get better every day, right? But it's because of your actions. It's the attitude that you wake up with, right?
It is indeed. Yes. What I do a lot of times, if I'm not in the best of moods, I think about how I start my day. When I get up in the morning, you have a choice. You can be happy or whatever the alternative is. And I think most people, I know myself, I want to be happy.
Yeah, I agree. So do I. So for me, every day I wake up and I woke up. I should be happy. I woke up. You know how many people don't get a chance to wake up? And it's every day. I'm sure this morning a lot of people passed in their sleep, and may they be going to home, if you will. But when we consider the fortune that we have to be able to wake up, why shouldn't you not be happy every day? Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a world that has a lot of ugly things that are going on constantly, but we need to see the beauty in it as well, right?
Exactly. Yes. And some of the habits I have to focus on that aspect of life, as you just said, with all the problems going on in the world. I stopped watching the news. It's been almost 9 years now. And
how many years?
Almost 9 years. Almost 9 years. And I remember the day I decided to stop watching it. And I remember having a conversation with who was then my girlfriend, now my wife. And we were getting into a political discussion, and we're on opposite sides of the fence. And she looked at me and she said, "How is this going to affect us?" And I said, "Well, of course it's going to affect us, because on the one hand, you got this, on the other hand, you got that." She goes, "No, no, no, no. Look it in the eye. How is that going to affect us, our relationship?" I said, "It won't. So why are we letting it bother us? Why are we getting into a heated discussion about it?" Good point. So that ended that conversation. And also it made me realize that things go on in the world, and all we can do is take care of ourselves and our own connections that we come to in the world. So bring positive messages to anybody that we do meet.
Right.
And by doing so, maybe we can just make the world a little bit happier.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, it's not just the news, but a lot of people, they read the newspaper, they look at all the crime, all these different things, and then they get down on themselves. The last time I actually looked at the news was 9/11, when that happened. So for me, I had never, because I used to go into the city, Manhattan, and I used to buy the newspaper because I wanted to look like everybody else on the paper. And I'm like, why am I reading this junk? I'm buying the Wall Street Journal. That's more my news, right? Things that affect my life, not things that don't affect my life. And so for me, it's always been about living in the moment, but planning for tomorrow. But what I want to do right now, if you don't mind, is, who is Joe? How do I get to know you? Joe, I want to know, where'd you grow up? who influenced you before the age of 10? I want to go all the way from that time till current time. So I want to get to know you, my friend.
Wow. How many hours do we have?
As many as you need.
I kid. Okay, quick background on me. I was actually born in Dublin, Ireland.
Mm.
And at the tender age of 6 months old, my family decided to immigrate to the United States. So we came over here, and I grew up outside the Boston area. And I lived there until I was 29. Then I moved. I became an entrepreneur, but up until the age of 10, of course, living in a small town outside of Boston, and when I look back on a very sheltered life and a very good life,
Mm.
and very, yeah, that's pretty much what I'd say there. So I'm six of seven children in my family, and I have five sisters and one brother. And my brother's 7 years older than me, so he's third in the pecking order. And I really didn't have a lot of brotherly influence growing up
Mm.
because for example, when I was 7 and started to want to connect with him, he was already 14 and off with his buddies. And you don't hang around with your little brother when you're 14. And by the time I got to my teen years, he was already off in the Air Force.
Mm.
So he was gone from the house, and he got married while he was in the Air Force. So he never really moved back home. So I grew up around a lot of women. And throughout my life, when I look back on it, my closest friends that I could at least confide in were always women.
Mm.
Now, I hung around with the guys. I was an athlete and played basketball. I played soccer, played some baseball. And I hung around with the guys, but we talked about jock stuff. It wasn't anything personal. And so that's kind of a lot of my influence. And I went to college and hated it.
Mm.
So finally dropped out, realized it wasn't for me because I need to be outdoors. I wanted adventure. I'm an outdoors guy.
Right.
And I quit my job, and we used to love to go camping on weekends. So my wife at that time suggested, why don't we buy a campground? I'm like, you crazy? We don't know anything about running a business. And we kind of had the attitude, well, somebody else did it. Why can't we? We'll figure it out.
Mm.
So I did. We moved to Maine, bought a campground up there. And personally, I loved it. Now, my wife didn't, not as much. And she didn't want to stay with it. So at the time, it was a very good real estate market. And there were condo builders knocking on our door. They wanted our land because we had almost a mile of lake frontage on a pristine Maine lake up in Bridgeton, Maine. And I just didn't want to see it get developed. So fortunately, the town did not have a public beach, even though there was 7 lakes in that town.
Huh.
And we happened to find out through a friend of ours who knew that they had funds set aside to eventually buy some waterfront property someday. Long story short, we ended up negotiating with the town and selling it to them. And we put in a clause that it can never be developed. It has to stay as a town beach and a campground.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that was, good Lord, that was 40 years ago. Good Lord, I'm getting up there. And I just happened to go up and visit it last year for the first time in about 30 years. And it's still pretty much the same. Just a beautiful spot, and so happy that that's one thing we did. And from there, we bought a Christmas tree farm because I wanted to be in business for myself. The reason we bought the campground is I got tired of punching the clock, working for the man, being told when to show up for work, what I had to do, couldn't go home till it was done, no matter if I had something else to do in my private life or not. And I just had that independent spirit. So again, the campground was great. We sold it, made some money. I looked around. The next opportunity was a Christmas tree farm. I said, great, that'll work. And we have a beautiful farm. We thought we'd get horses someday. And I'm sure you realize this, most people know it, but the Christmas tree farm business is very seasonal. And I needed something to do the rest of the year. So the woman who sold us the campground owned a real estate agency up there, and we sold it to the town on our own. We didn't go through a realtor, but she said, "You're good at real estate. You should come work for me the rest of the year." So I did. I got my real estate license. And that eventually got me into real estate appraising. And when our parents passed away, my wife wanted to move somewhere south where she could wear sneakers year round, as she put it. A long story, a couple of years of research. We ended up where I am now in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, on the southeast coast of the United States. And we thought we'd give it a year, see how it goes. And if things work out, we'll stay. If not, we'll go back home. We had 3 young children, 10, 7, and 5 at the time. Came down to Charleston, thought, well, I'll find a job somewhere. Well, they were going through some tough times because it was a military town and they were closing the Navy base.
All right.
So I saw a lot of residential areas around. I thought, we're going to make it one way or another. And I eventually did start my own business, my own appraisal business. And it took off like wildfire. And within a few short years, I grew that business to have the 2nd largest firm in town.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I finally made it. I did it my way, the good old American way, the capitalist way. You know, you go out there, you take a chance, and you either sink or swim.
Yeah.
And
well, it's taking that chance that you did, right? Let me ask you, when you were young, you talked about your brother not necessarily connecting with you because of the difference in age of 7 years. But then you also talked about that you confided more in the women in your life. Who were your biggest influencers back when you recall as a kid?
Wow, you know, that's something I thought about a lot. And I'm not sure that there was any one person that really influenced me. I, how do I say this nicely? I developed an affection for girls at a young age. I got interested in girls very young.
Right.
And boy, that
Makes
there
you
was
think.
one particular girl in high school who came to me one time and just opened up about her family life at home, which was not good. And I just thought, I was kind of shocked at that because this was a beautiful girl, very friendly. Everybody loved her. She was very popular. And yet she came from a very tough home life. I was obviously able to keep that between us. And she woke me up to a lot of things that, you know, things aren't always what they seem.
Oh, yeah. That's for
People
sure.
show up nice, but you don't know what's going on behind or inside, I should say, inside their head. So I think she was probably a significant influence on me because it made me realize, you know, the pretty girls aren't the happiest ones all the time.
Right.
And sometimes what I look at as maybe not so pretty or attractive are happier people. And it made me go beyond the superficial of the physical appearance and start to see people on a deeper level.
Wow, that's huge. That's a huge lesson. And the way you took it, I think that's a huge lesson for anybody even listening to us now. Because, and anybody listening to, please go ahead and put any comments you like in the chat and we'll bring them across the screen. When we consider the deeper meaning of another person, right? And you talked about it not being superficial, but what makes them, what's their real character? Because I think that a lot of people judge someone by the looks, by what they have, the material things that they have, but not by their character. And that was a great lesson that you learned early on. So you also talked about your wife at the time, and you were 29 years old, and you bought this farm. Yet it was her idea, and she didn't want it anymore. When you think about it, right? So a lot of times we come up with ideas, And then when we're in it, when the thick of it, we're like, what did I do? Is that probably what happened to her? But were you happy with it?
Happy with her decision or happy with our
With the
situation?
decision that you bought the farm to begin with?
When we decided to buy the campground, again, we used to go camping all the time.
After, right.
Yeah, that's okay. Um, I one thing I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Going camping is so wonderful. Living there full time would be heaven.
Mm.
Being there all the time. My wife was the type that didn't want people so much in her personal space. She was a great cook. And I thought a bed and breakfast would be the best idea.
But not for her.
And she basically said, I don't even want people in my house, so having them in my backyard is bad enough. However, because we love camping, let's do it and make a living of it. And when we did that, she soon realized that no, she didn't like people around because, people come up to you any hour of the day and night. I actually, on July 4th, which is our busiest weekend, had somebody knock on our door at 4 a.m. And wanted to know if they could take one of the canoes out and go fishing pre-dawn. And now the canoes are laying on the beach, and everybody pretty much knew it's an honor system. You take the canoe out, they rent by the hour, you come back and come see us. And that's how things worked back then. And of course, we had a baby at the time. He was just a year old, actually, and woke him up. And that just made for a super long day. And we were exhausted at the end of that day. And these things started to add up. And people complained about, you won't believe this, people complained about it was too windy, it was too rainy, it was too buggy at their sites. What can we do about it? Like, hello, you're out in nature. I mean, come on, people. And they hadn't invented glamping back then, but had they done that, I would have said so. But I think I told a couple of them, well, why don't you get a hotel room then?
It's very interesting when you talk about people were complaining about, and people will complain about just anything.
Yes.
Because that's what they're used to.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not. And again, that goes back to what we opened with, is some people just can't be happy. And that contributes to it. Yeah. Yeah. Happiness is a choice. And what is your choice?
Right.
So that's what ended up happening was she's learned to hate it for that reason. And she said, we need something else. And she always wanted horses and animals. And we thought, well, we'll find something else to do. Maybe we'll just buy a farm and, have some horses. And then when the Christmas tree business came available, that was on 50 acres, if I remember right. And we had some open land and there was a barn. And we thought, okay, this is perfect. We can have some income, plus we'll get our farm eventually. And the reason we didn't stay there, which I would have forever, it was heaven. Our children were just growing up and our oldest was starting to go to school. And you got to imagine, we were out in the middle of nowhere. Our nearest neighbor was 4 miles away. And the nearest store was, I think, 10, 12 miles away. So he was very isolated, playing by himself. And then when he went to school, after a couple of weeks, they called us in and said, we have some issues with your child. He's not being social. He'd rather stay in the other corner and play by himself. And so we came to realize that, you know what, we're having more children. We're going to have to move back to civilization. So ended up having to sell that, or not having to, but chose to sell that. However, I was in real estate at the time and I was starting to do well. So at least we had that income going.
So, Joe, you and I both have something after our name. And it's 4 letters. Tell me about your 4 letters. And how did you come about your 4 letters?
So the 4 letters represent our personality code. And I learned about, as you have, I learned about it in 2019, my wife and I, and we loved it so much, how accurate and how easy it was, that we decided to get licensed and certified to train it and teach it. So the 4 letters are A stands for action type personality. These are the people that are just a go, go, go all the time. They're drinking Red Bull all day long, like little firecrackers in your hand, and they just love instant opportunity, and they don't like to plan anything, and they just like to have fun, 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 right? Then the second one is nurturing. These are your people with the heart of gold, and they love to help others, support others, and share with others. Those are people that are typically in nonprofits. You'll get a lot of people like that. They love to give out charity, help charities and help people less fortunate, so to speak. And then the third letter, K, that's knowledge. These are people that love to do research and get all the facts. They can't move forward unless they know everything and have it right. It has to be correct. They can tend to get into analysis paralysis and can't make a decision because they're not sure they're going to be right or not. And then that fourth one is B for blueprint. These are people that want to plan everything. They have organization. They got schedules for their schedules. So they might have a what do you call it? A Excel spreadsheet that lays everything out for them. And they've got a calendar for the calendar for that calendar. Those people tend to be risk adverse versus that first letter, which is my primary one. We love to take risk. And that's why I'm an entrepreneur. Right. So what we do is, if I may show you real briefly, is when we meet people, typically, there are other ways to do it, but the easiest way is we have these 4 cards. And because people their personalities are based on their values. And that's the beauty of this, is all the other ones are based on psychology, whereas this one is value-based. And it takes less than 90 seconds to figure out who somebody is. So you literally hand them the 4 cards. They each have a set of values on them. You ask them to read those values, then sort the cards in order of which one sounds most like them on top, progressively down to what's least like them at the end. And that's where this order comes in. So I am a very action-oriented person. I love an opportunity. I love to take chances. We use an analogy of a box. Like, we're like, what box? You're not putting us in any box. And then that second one is nurturing. I love to help people, love to give back. When I get into stress, which is that third one, I tend to research things more. Like if I'm going to make a big purchase, I will research the heck out of it because I want to make sure that I'm not getting ripped off, basically. And then that fourth one, in my case, the blueprint, I'm not one to plan anything. And luckily, my wife's a good planner, so we get along very well. But it does frustrate her because she is very high in planning, and I don't plan. I fly by the seat of my pants. So if you and I was sitting here and you say, you know what, Joe, I'm going down to Key West this weekend, and I got an opening for a VIP pass for you. Would you like to come? I'm like, what time are we leaving?
Let's go.
Yeah, I'll cancel everything and go. So
I have the cards too, right? We are the same codes because
exactly, yes.
Like you, I'm an action. I don't drink Red Bull. I think Red Bull it was created because of people like you and me, so that other people can feel the way we feel, right?
I'm exactly the same. I don't drink it either. I don't need it.
I don't need anything. I don't need liquor. I don't need drugs. People are like, what are you on? I'm on life. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I have a big heart like you do. And for me, knowledge is, like you said, it's a passion. I do like rules. I do like abiding by some of them, but I also break the rules, right? And I'm sure you do too.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other one is, of course, blueprint, right? Because we need to know what's going on. So I love the fact that these concepts, these ideas, but not everybody has the same codes. And I love the fact that your codes can interject according to your situation, right?
Yes.
So talk to me about how knowing these codes, and you were telling me when we had a conversation earlier, how you were a very high percentage in the real estate. You were what, 27%, if I recall? and everybody else is 20%, but you are
Yeah,
high already, right?
closing ratio on a initial appointment with a prospect, and typically, let's say a listing appointment, the first time you go. National Association of Realtor statistics say that your chance of closing that on the first appointment is running around 22% nationally. I was closing at 37%. And
30
I was already a realtor of distinction, which is the top 10% of all the agents. So I already thought I was, hey, 37% versus 2022. I'm on top of the world. Once I started implementing this personality system into my business and learning, cracking people's codes, that's basically what we call it, and um, identifying the different type of person they are and learning how to relate to them by talking their language instead of my language, then that went from 37% all the way up to 86% closing
Get
ratio.
out of town. Get out of town.
Seriously, I
Really.
couldn't believe it myself.
Only because of the bank, right? Because of these cards, you went from 37 to 86. That's unheard of. And it's
Yes,
because of a system of knowing how to talk to your clients, right?
that takes less than 90 seconds. I know. And that's the link. I see you got my link down there, and anybody can go to that site and just all you do is you're going to sort the 4 cards in order and put in your information, and we'll send you a customized report. It's $100 value. I'll gift it to you, and
Nice.
it'll tell you all about yourself and your tendencies, because people want to be understood and liked.
Mhm.
And the Charlie Group says that 87, yeah, I think it's 87% of people will do business with people that are like them, no matter what they're selling them.
Yeah.
So when you
So
can
here you
learn
go.
to, I'm sorry.
Lily Williams says that she loved and she's very grateful for learning the codes from you and Cindy. Is Cindy your wife?
Yes, she is. Yes, her and I coach and train this together, and we were fortunate enough to meet Lely. She's a fabulous person. We met her in Vegas a few weeks ago at
Nice.
a convention we were at, and what was I going to say? People will like to deal with people that are like themselves. So what this does in less than 90 seconds, for example, if I was just coming to meet you for the first time, I would hand you those cards and you would sort them and hand them back to me. And that tells me what type of person you are and what you value.
Mhm.
Because to be the best agent I can be for you, I want to know what your values are and what's important to you versus any assumptions I might make about you from external observation. So literally, you tell me, Joe, I want you to talk to me like this and communicate with me like this.
Mhm.
That's how it made it so easy. And the way I'm not one, again, to keep records and things, and I didn't have my percentages, but my wife obviously noticed a big difference because my number of conversions and my listings increased. And of course, my income went up, relatively. And she said, "What do you know what your percentages are?" And I said, "No, I don't. I don't do statistics or keep schedules or anything." She goes, "I think you need to go back and check that. Go back to your appointments." So I did. I went prior to doing it, and that's how I got the 37. And then it was about 10-month span, all the appointments and listings I got in that time, and those are the numbers I came up with. And I frankly was shocked. I
Wow,
didn't realize it made that much of a difference.
that's
So it's
incredible.
one of the best tools ever I didn't discover it, but ever came across and found out about.
One of the things that's actually happening today is that there's a webinar that people can attend
That's
at
correct.
4 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So if anybody's interested, you can either reach out to Joe, reach out to me, and we'll get you situated for tonight's webinar. It is so the question that I have for everybody listening, and Esther actually asked this question yesterday, and I want to reframe it a little bit. And how much money are you planning on having at the end of the year? Or how about at the end of this month? How about at the end of this week? How about at the end of today? But you don't need to tell me the amount. The question I want to ask is, how many more zeros would you like to add to that number?
Yeah.
Let's say you're making $80,000 a year. Would you like to put another zero on it? Make 800,000? How about an extra? Make 8 million. So the question is, or 800,000, right? So as many numbers as you want to add, you can. But the thing is that you actually have to believe you can,
Yes.
because a lot of people, they don't believe they can accomplish something, right? You and your wife did not buy the campground and the farm without knowing that you could do it, that you had the money, that you were able to do things. Your real estate sales did not go up because you said, "Oh, I hope somebody comes through," right? You kind of manifested that. And that's what Esther was talking about yesterday, about that we need to manifest what we want in our lives, but we can't just dream of it. We actually have to take action as well, right?
Yes, very much so.
Zeros do you want?
Exactly. And you nailed it. You've got to manifest it and you've got to take action on it. Because if you don't take action on it, it's a dream. And dreams don't come true that way. They can, but I see a lot of people anytime I stop in a store or whatever, and they're playing the lottery. I used to be guilty of that too. What are your chances of actually winning that lottery? They're probably some of the worst chances of anything in the world. They say you've got a stronger chance of getting hit by lightning, right? Or eaten by a shark. And those are some of the things I thought about over the years, and especially being an entrepreneur, because you are responsible for anything that comes your way. The buck stops here.
That's it.
You can't pass it on. But you also don't have to listen to anybody else either. And you've got that satisfaction of knowing you did it. So that's what drives me. So you do have to believe it, and you have to take action, and it's got to be with you constantly. Now, I did want to touch on one other thing.
Sure.
Yes, this helped me make a lot more money, and it made our life easier. And they also say it closes more sales in less time. And that gave me a lot of time back to spend with my wife and my family and travel and do the things we want to do. But you know what we found out about it, which it wasn't sold as this. It was sold as a sales tool. It's actually helped build relationships better. We have firsthand accounts of our friend Michelle, her and her son, where they had that very bad relationship and they butted heads all the time, and he hated to be around her. And then when she discovered this and realized her and her son have totally different personalities, now they can understand each other and relate better, and they have a beautiful relationship. So it helps that way. We know it saved marriages. I am aware of one case directly where one of our fellow trainers, it helped save her brother's life. He had tried to commit suicide twice.
Wow.
By the age of 23. And once she learned the system, she went and figured out who he was, and they were mistaken. He wasn't who they thought he was. And his side of the story was, people just don't get me. They don't understand me. So I just want out. There's no point in being here. That was what it boiled down to. Wow. And she went and coded her whole family, her parents and another sibling. And they had they call that intercession.
Yep.
The word's not coming to me. Anyway, once they figured it all out and realized who he was, they could change how they treated him and how they communicated with him. Then he felt loved and understood. And since then, he went back and finished college, and he has a full-time job. And I don't know, that was 4 years ago. And I honestly haven't talked to our fellow trainer in 3 years. So I'm not sure where he's at now, if he's found a wife or anything like that, but he is doing well. And I had an instance in my real estate dealings where I'm not taking credit for it, but I do believe I was instrumental in helping him change his mind about checking out. And that's a bit of an involved story, but he had hinted a few times where people just didn't understand what he was going through. He was married a long time and lost his wife, very grief stricken. Um, he just didn't think anybody knew what he was going through, and he just wanted to end it all. And I knew he owned a gun and things like that. So I was concerned about him. And knowing his personality type, I was able to communicate with him in his way of communicating and connected with him. And I was able to turn that around. And I said, Steve, I want you to think of something, because he was moving to another part of the country. I said, you say nobody understands what you're going through. And I'm one of those. I've never had that happen to me, thank God. So I'm not going to say that I can understand how you feel. But you know what? There are a lot of other men out there that are going through or have gone through what you've gone through. So would you do me a favor and consider joining a support group? Maybe not that you want the help, but you could help a lot of guys in that room, because you can relate and you do understand what they're going through. And you could see the light bulb go off. And he just went, Joe, I never really thought about that. I said, just give it some thought, Steve. It's a big, big decision. He said, I'll definitely think about that. And he did. He moved there. He got in touch with me and he told me, Joe, I've joined a support group, and it's early on, but he says, so far, so good. And he does feel like he can contribute to these guys and help them out. So, it's just a matter of attitude and how you look at things.
What I'm listening to you talking about is that a bank is not just for business, but it's also for relationships. It's also for understanding another person, where they're coming from. And to me, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that a lot of parents, a lot of communication is lost, because we don't talk to someone in their language, if you will, right? So for me, it's always, being that I teach so many different people. I have a communication school, and I'm starting a new program coming June 22nd, where we're going to be teaching teens, kids and teens, on how to communicate and become great leaders. But it starts with being understood, because teens, unfortunately, are not understood, and those are the ones that take their lives very
Yes.
often. It's so, so sad. But if they can be understood, if they can have a voice that they can say, hey, you know what? This is me. This is who I am. So for everybody who's going to be coming through my program, they are all going to be knowing their code and knowing what makes them function. And when they come in, they're going to have a name tag with their code, so everybody can go, hey, you're just like me. Wow, that's just cool. Or you're a little different than me. Tell me about you. So when we can communicate that way, where everybody says, well, we're similar or we're very far apart, but how can we use that to benefit one another? And I think that's lost without knowing where we're at.
I love that. That is so beautiful, because that is the biggest bane of even corporations or everyday life, is communication or miscommunication. If
Joe,
you just take
imagine if
time
you
to
went to the
understand.
store. Imagine if you went to the store and the clerk had their code on their tag, and then you got into an Uber, and the Uber guy had a tag. This is my code. And imagine you got on the bus, and the bus driver would have it. And that would be an incredible world to live in. Unfortunately, that's not reality. But what if we understood what makes someone's code stand out for them? And we can just kind of look at them, talk to them for a couple of minutes, and go, I think I have an idea about it, without even saying anything. Maybe you didn't meet the person, maybe you saw them somewhere and you see their actions. But I think understanding how to read a code, how to read a person by their actions, tells us a lot. And I think anybody listening to us, you can go to Joe's, Crack the Code with Joe. You can crack it with me. You should come tonight if you're able to. It's going to be, Joe and I, we're going to give it to you guys free, free, which, how many things in life are free that you can truly benefit, that you can put zeros in your bank account? And not the zeros in the front, the zeros in the back, right?
Good
Not in the
distinction.
front, because placement is everything as well, right?
Good point.
So that's something that we're gifting to everybody today. So thank you, Joe, for being here with me and
Sure.
telling me a little bit about your story. I do have a question for you, because you told me that when you started doing your real estate appraisal, you did something that other people didn't do. And that made you the top guy around. Tell us a little bit about that, and how that even helped shape the way you do business.
So ask me that again. I'm not sure I was clear
Your
on that.
appraisals, when everybody was waiting 30 days to get their appraisals.
Oh, yes.
See, I
Okay.
remember that
I
conversation.
forgot I told you about that. Oh, thank you for reminding me.
You know, I
Yes,
pay attention, right?
yes, you do, obviously, better than I do, apparently. Yeah, when I first moved to Charleston and I was getting my business going, I quickly realized, now, nothing against Southerners, but it was known, this was, 30 years ago. Um, the understanding, the general understanding, is people are a little slower in the South. I found out now it's because they enjoy life, they relax, and they take time to think before they respond. I grew up in the Northeast where it's go, 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 just rapid fire, right? So that was the contrast. But when I started to work for a gentleman here who had an appraisal company, the orders would come in from the bank and they would take 2 or 3 weeks to get the order done. And I know that the banks wanted them as quickly as possible. So I got the light bulb idea when I started my own business. I said, I'm going to turn these around quicker. And I walked into a bank one day, talked to a mortgage loan officer, and she says, can I help you? And I says, well, I'm a real estate appraiser starting up my own company here. And she didn't even look up at me. She goes, oh, those are a dime a dozen, you know? And I said, so you're getting quick turnaround time? She goes, what do you mean by quick turnaround time? Still not looking up at me. And I said, 48 hours. And she stopped and looked at me and said, what do you mean? What's 48 hours? I said, I will have the report on your desk within 48 hours of seeing the property. And that's my promise. And it just kind of came out of me. I'm not even sure why I said 48 hours, but I thought, okay, I can do it that quick. Now, back then, we didn't have emails to send them back and forth. You had to print them out on legal size paper, and
Right.
you had to tape the photos on there, and you had to tape maps on there, and go to Walmart, 1 hour of photo developing, get the pictures back and all that. And then you had to put them in a manila envelope, and I hand delivered them to them, all over the city. So I did one. She gave me a couple of orders. She goes, yeah, here you go. She was kind of like, didn't believe me. Says, yeah, we'll see what this guy can do. Well, a day and a half later, I brought one in. Now, in reality, it was a vacant home under contract. I could go in anytime. So I literally worked from like 6 in the morning till 11 at night getting that report done. And the next day I brought it into her and she goes, what's this? And I said, well, this is the first one. I'll have the other one tomorrow. She goes, weren't you just in here? I said, yeah, but I told you to get it done in 48 hours. And I was able to get into that house yesterday morning. So here it is. She goes, can you do this like every time? I said, sure. She's like, oh, okay. Well, here's a couple more to do. And the next thing you know, I start getting calls from other branch loan officers saying, hey, Amy said that you can do these in like 2 or 3 days. Can you do that for us too? And I said, sure, send them on. And next thing you know, I started getting business like crazy. And within 2 months, I had to hire an appraiser. I had to hire an office manager, and things just rolled from there. So to this day, my card still says, ask me about our 48-hour turnaround time.
I love it.
And now the industry's changed tremendously since then. But that was that's the secret sauce, the magic pill that got me elevated and got my game going, amped it up.
Without any Red Bull, too, people.
Yeah,
Without any Red
and you know what? It goes back to my personality. I'm an action
Bull.
type guy, opportunity, just like, let's do it now. Why wait? Why plan it out? Just do it.
Yeah.
So
Let's get it done. Let's get it done. I love
Yep.
it. So, Joe, you, tell me, how on earth did you even find Bank and this incredible woman, Cherry Tree, who is just phenomenal? I mean, she blows me away.
yeah. Um, Actually, I had seen Tony Robbins up in Washington, D.C.,
Mhm.
and my wife had not seen him. And he was coming to Atlanta, and it was a weekend, what they call a National Achievers Conference. And they had all these top speakers from around the world coming there, and Tony was going to be there. So it was relatively affordable. And I said to her, I says, I can go here for business and I'll take you. We can go to Atlanta for the weekend, have some fun in the off hours, and you get to see Tony Robbins live. So she's like, okay, let's go. And what happened was every speaker had about an hour to do their spiel over the 2 days. At the end of the second day, Sherry Tree was coming on. Now, we had never heard of this woman. And my brain was full. I was ready to get out of this. 7,000 people in this conference center. And I said, let's go. Let's get out of here before the rush. She goes, no. My wife used to be in theater. So she said, you never walk out on the final act. And she's the only woman. So let's show some respect. So Sherry started talking, and it wasn't even 15 minutes into her hour, she mentioned one world, one language. Because we all have a personality code. And once we understand it, we can communicate. And my wife says, we're signing up for this. I don't know what it is, but we're signing up for it. And she literally walked up to the registration table to sign up.
Wow.
And matter of fact, you've met Jeannie, I think. And Jeannie is the woman that was there. And so I'm listening to it, and it was all about sales, closing more sales in less time. And I said, well, you know what? This could work in my real estate. So I'll support her and we'll sign up. And we did. We went to another introductory session for it a few weeks later, and they were looking for trainers. And Sherry said, if you want to be up on stage like me, presenting, and you can make money at the same time, would you be interested? We're looking for trainers. My wife said she used to be on the stage, so she wanted to get back up there like that. And I, being the action type, I like being the center of attention and getting accolades. I thought, sure, why not? Let's do it. And so we did. We took the deep dive and we signed up and we became the certified trainers that we are today.
That's incredible. That's
So
incredible. So you and your wife are a power team, if you will, right?
yes.
What is your wife's
We
code?
actually, that little award, that right there,
Uh-huh.
we won the Power Couple Award for Code Breaker,
Oh,
which
awesome.
is the company that this is through.
Right. What's her code?
She is nurturing knowledge, blueprint, action. So almost the opposite of me.
Almost the opposite. That's pretty cool.
Her action is very
that's
low.
why you guys blend so well together, right?
Yes. And I will tell you too, the relationship aspect of this, to me, is the more valuable part. Cindy and I have been together 9 years and married 6, and we have a fabulous relationship. But any relationship, there's these little idiosyncrasies that the other one does that just kind of start to get under your skin a little bit, irritate you, and you don't know why they're doing it. And Cindy and I, when we learned about this, all of a sudden it's like, that's why you do that. My big story is, it's been a great week. I had a successful week. It's Friday, 6 o'clock. It's a beautiful evening here in Charleston. Let's go sit on a rooftop bar and, maybe have dinner and watch the sunset and all that. I says, come on, let's go out to dinner instead of staying in. She goes, no. I want to stay in. I said, why? It's a beautiful night. Action, instant. She's more the blueprint. She's got to plan it out. So she's like, no, I planned on staying in and we'll watch a movie or something, right? I was like, oh, come on. That's so, and it'll cause a little friction there, right? And now I know she likes to know ahead of time what we're going to do. So as I say, I want to let her know on Wednesday that, hey, if Friday night's a good night, would you be interested in going out somewhere? And as she would say, if she was here, she would say, yeah, I'd like to know ahead of time so I can wash my hair and do things like that, so I'll be ready to go out. And
And
she
then
likes to
make
prepare.
reservations.
Yeah,
Yes.
me, I just throw on a shirt, my sandals, and we're off, right? So, yeah, but that helps us to understand each other, so we don't have that little bickering going on that a lot of people do. And that's honestly, I think, in the end, how a lot of marriages end, because it starts out, you're infatuated with each other, and then things are great for a while, that honeymoon period. But after a while, it gets, routine, and it's not so thrilling anymore. And then, that just builds and builds and builds. And eventually it's aggravation. You start arguing and fighting, and then you're not in love anymore. So this saves
It,
marriages.
it does. It's funny. I saw something where it said, "Oh, she's over there and she's scratching, and it's so cute, and the way she eats an apple is so cute, and she's adorable." And then that's in the beginning, and then you're looking at, 36 months, and then all of a sudden, like, what is that noise? What is she making? Why is she chewing an apple so loud? Or why is she scratched like that? And all of a sudden, it's annoying, 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 because we never realize that in the beginning it is infatuation, but later on it's about what's more important, right? Do we still love them the same way, or did we change? Because they're the same. It's almost, it reminds me of somebody says, I love you, now change.
Mm,
Change the way I want you to be, right? So I like the fact that you're using code to understand one another, because
yes.
she probably goes, boy, I know he's going to want to go out tonight, so let me prepare for him. And let me set things up so he can see my point of view, right? So I love that you're able to use the code to have a better relationship. What would your life have been like if you were a teenager and you had this?
Oh, I
Because
say that often.
my
Yes.
goal is to impact the teenagers that I teach now. My goal is to crack the code of all of the kids who are 5, 6, 7 years old, have the parents crack their codes so that they can go, wait a minute, I can communicate with my kids. I can understand why they do crazy things, or they're
Yes.
not, they're staying in their room. They don't want to go socialize. So now I can start to understand them. Maybe they don't want to go to the movies. Maybe they want to sit home and read a book. But the parents are like, "We're going," and 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 so, or a lot of times the kids, you have two kids. I have two twins here that I have several twins that I teach, and they're so different. And the
Yes.
mother sometimes is like, "Oh, I don't get this one." You will once you crack their code. So
Exactly. Yes. And that
that's
goes to the thing that, raise the children that you have, not the children you want them to be. How many parents have two, three, four children and they treat them all the same?
yeah.
Yet each one of those is very unique and very different. And, we are starting to use this in schools
Mm.
for anti-bullying campaigns. So think about this. Kids pick on the kids that they think are different, right? They don't fit in, so they pick on them and abuse them. And those are the ones, unfortunately, that will tend to commit suicide because they realize nobody loves them. They don't belong. Why am I here?
Mm.
However, once they understand that there's nothing wrong with them, they just look at the world differently and they think differently. And if you can understand that, you can relate to them, and then everybody gets along. And we have seen firsthand instances where this has happened. And now, for example, they go in and they train the teachers what this is so they understand it. And then they go into the classroom. I believe it was a fifth grade class. They coded all the children, and they have a name tag with the dots, the colored dots, because there are 4 colors on here. And it gives them the order that they're in. So me as an action with my red card first, and yet I see somebody that's got the blue card first, who is a planner and doesn't like to take risk and all that. and follows the rules. Rules are meant to be followed. With me, rules are meant to be broken.
That's right.
The nurturing as well. I'll bend the rules a little bit just to support you, but I don't really want to get in trouble. And the knowledge, they're the smart ones in the room. They're like, you wouldn't have the rules or the box, for example. You wouldn't have the box unless we engineered it and created it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So your blueprints are inside the box. The actions don't want to be anywhere near it. They'll blow it up. The nurturing, they repurpose it, recycle it. They'll put flowers in and make it a flower box or give it as a gift basket. But the knowledge, they're the smart ones. So,
Right. Yeah.
And once we know that people are that way, and then I also do NLP training, neuro linguistic programming. And as we say, people have different, what we call map of the territory, or how they interpret the world. So we got to understand that everybody's different and unique.
Because everybody has a different fingerprint, though. So everybody has a different ID. But
Yes.
one of the things that I always talk about, Joe, is I live in my world. You live in your world. Even your wife lives in a different world. But we share this world together. So how can we communicate to understand one another, right?
Yes.
How can I understand a teenager? How can I understand a 5-year-old? How can I understand a 59-year-old? How can I understand a 27-year-old when they all have different views, different ideas? People want to look at different types of movies. People listen to different music. They like different art. They like different foods. How do we communicate? How do we get along? How do we do anything unless we try to understand the person we're with or the people or the community we want to thrive in? So today's topic was helping professionals thrive. But it's not just professionals, Joe. You're helping more than just people buy something. You're helping people understand one another better. So I want to
Yes.
thank you for that.
Well, I thank you for having me on. This has been an honor for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I'm having.
I sincerely hope that we have helped somebody or some people out there today by having this conversation.
I think so. I think that this conversation needs to be had more often. I think the more people that have their codes cracked, either going, I have mine going across, but I'm going to put yours also. Here's yours, right? Pick one.
Okay. Yes.
Doesn't matter which one, right? You can
Yep.
go to Joe's, you can go to mine. But here's the cool thing. There's also, this is the one that has words on it, right? This is, there's 12 different characteristics to a specific code. But guess what? There's also ones for the little guys.
Yes. For the little children, or people have difficulty understanding English. Now, we do have them in different languages too, like Spanish, etc. Yet there are some people, I was working with a Vietnamese couple one time, and he couldn't read the cards, but she didn't read very well. She didn't understand what the English meant. And I showed her the icon cards.
Nice.
And she was able to do it that way.
So that's communication 101.
Mm-hmm.
We have to break the barrier.
Yeah.
We have to actually bridge the gap in communication. And that's why I have a communication center. That's why I'm creating a platform online. I have instructors from all over the world who are going to be part of this platform. But guess what? Every one of my instructors has to have their code cracked in order to become an instructor.
Great.
And everybody who's going to come into the programs, in order for them to become part of the program, we have to know their code.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we know their code, we know how they learn. Therefore, we can teach them better.
Yes.
So there's so much to this. And for business, it's huge. For getting to help one another, it's huge. Understanding your neighbors is huge.
Yes. And keep in mind that we are not just one of those 4 codes. We are a combination of them. And depending on our situation, for example, we shift when we go into stress. And knowing the combination allows us to recognize that. So when I'm dealing with my clients in real estate, a lot of times they are in stress. It's not their natural characteristics or values that they're going by, but they're stressed out. So that changes. And the training that we can give is you learn to recognize the fact that they're in that, and you meet them where they're at. You don't just start out in their primary code. You meet them where they're stressed.
Right.
And then knowing their combination, you can, as we call, walk them off the ledge and bring them back down and take the stress out. And I get more Google reviews from my clients who say, Joe, that was just much easier than we thought it was going to be, that whole process, thanks to you.
Mm.
And I know it's because I understand their personality and I can relate to it.
Yeah.
That's
I had a kid.
stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly when you talked about meeting them where they are. I had a kid, we're almost done. I had a kid who, in the middle of my class, was like sad. I'm like, what's the matter? He goes, I want to go home. He's 5 years old. I said, why? He goes, I miss my dad. His mother brought him. I said, but you're here now. But I miss my dad so much. I said, I got to be honest. I miss your dad too. I wish he was here. I said, how about you do me a favor? Can you give your dad a hug from me when you see him when you go home? He goes,
Sweet.
yeah. I said, would it be okay if you gave me a hug? And man, did he give me he didn't want to let go once he hugged me. So and then he felt so much better. But if I would have said, oh, why do you need to go home? If I would have been like, no, you got to be here. You got to, finish class. It would have not worked out for him. He would have been miserable. But I met him where he was. We hugged it out. Basically, he hugged me really tight, almost like he didn't want to let go. And then he got back in class and he was happy. And his mother's like, what was that? I told her, and she's like, thank you. Thank you for him. He's very sweet and he is missing his dad. I said, oh, of course, But when we can help someone, because you're right, we meet them where they are, that changes the dynamic of the situation.
And think about how that could change their life as they grow older. For example, in this case, and I was putting myself in that scenario, had you just said, well, forget about your dad, you got to get this done and make sure you do this exercise or whatever you're working on, I would start to not like that class and I would quit. Whereas you doing this and that child stays in there, who knows, maybe someday he could become a champion. So you could have a profound effect on his life simply by understanding how to connect.
Yeah, I was given a gift, and the gift is to help as many people as I can. And thank you, Joe, for being here and helping me today to understand the beauty of what you bring into this world and how you've elevated not only other people, but yourself and your family to be incredible. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Everybody, do me a favor. Follow the show. If you like the show, share it. And if you're interested in tonight's webinar, reach out to Joe, reach out to me, and we'll make sure we get you signed up for it. Everybody have yourself an exceptional rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Great one.
Be happy.
Yes, absolutely.